Welcome back to Tech Tuesday here on Northwest Digital News. Kevin Hunter, Harry Brelsford is in studio with us today, and Kyle Torgerson. So we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 and some various components of it. So where would you like to start, Harry?
Well, it's I always like to go almost chronologically. So let's let everybody just step back for a second. Let's put it in perspective. In 07, so 12 years ago, Microsoft took what was the familiar bundling concept, and it was an early cloud rendition of that, and it was called Business Productivity Office Suite, or BPOS. And like Microsoft tends to do, and Kevin, it takes them 2-3 times to get it right. That's their pattern. So we're just going to put BPOS over here, okay?
Yes.
And come about 2012, they were much closer ready for prime time. So we're going to call that BPOS Rendition 1, Office 365 Rendition 2. And that in and of itself is noteworthy that was 2012. And that's 7 years ago, right? I mean, people, when you tell this story, people are like, wow, I remember that. And Office 365 was solid. And they had the data centers up and running, and you could depend on it. And as you can see on the screen, it's basically Microsoft Office. So no special magic there. And then within the last year, Microsoft is, I would call it a brand extension, and the brand extension is Microsoft 365. So it's the next generation, and moving forward, what you're going to see is that's going to be intended to be the umbrella brand for Microsoft solutions that businesses use, we all use. And then, if you like, we could jump into the components of Microsoft 365. I just want to give you the history.
Yeah. Well, one of them that I would love to talk about is actually the program that you see there above Kyle, Excel.
Yep.
Did you ever use Lotus 123 back in the day?
I still have those / keystrokes memorized.
There you go. So I was a big Lotus 123 user as well, because I've always loved any of the software that helps from a statistician viewpoint of the world, managing numbers and data. I always loved that. When Excel came along, oh man, that was like a dream come true. It was so easy to use.
They took it to the next level.
Oh, it really did. So there's a lot of things about Office 365 that I liked, and things that Microsoft launched. But Excel was by far one of my favorites.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I was just talking last night, catching up with Harry Jr., my son, at Cal Poly, and we were talking about Microsoft Excel. So not surprisingly, at a technical college, an engineering-based college, they use Microsoft Excel, and I was like, well, have you used pivot tables and stuff? Oh yeah, I know all that. But Excel is, to me, it's certainly in my opinion the most powerful component of Office 365. I mean, there's some real there. PowerPoint's cute, Microsoft Word's a necessity, but boy, Excel, you can do some damage.
Yeah. And I think about like all the different ways in which I helped businesses over the years, and without Excel, that would have been really hard, because there's things as a statistician that I understood mathematically about data that was going on, but Excel gave me the opportunity to make it very visual for people who didn't really understand math or statistics.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one more war story. When I first moved to Seattle in '89, I was starting my own, I was waving my wand to be an entrepreneur. So one of my side gigs was to be a permatemp at Microsoft on the Excel 3.0 team. And my job, or the team's job, was to bring in finance, there's a thing called the DuPont ratio model, which is a series of common ratios in business.
Yep.
And that was supported by Lotus 123, and Excel didn't have those functions. And I was really the only business person on that team, right? Because everyone else were coders. I mean, they're really good. And So I kind of had to explain a quick ratio, a current ratio, and they were a little bewildered. They're like, well, why do you care? I'm like, man, trust me, you care. But we were trying, this is back when Lotus 123 and Excel 3.0 were really duking it out. I mean, it wasn't clear who the winner would be. And so we brought that functionality in as functions, and the rest is history. But boy, that was a great side gig.
So of the components that are on it, we've talked about Excel. There was PowerPoint in there. I had a lot of interface with PowerPoint, interestingly, in the military.
Sure.
Because it became a preferred training model to teach new soldiers and stuff. Yeah. I actually called that, that was one of the things I was a little bit of a rebel on when it came to teaching, because I called it death by PowerPoint, and I forced my sergeants to get PowerPoint out of their training modules, and it's like, start teaching them real life. So but I'm not saying, I didn't say that to say that PowerPoint wasn't useful as far as a presentation, a product and all that kind of good stuff. Had a lot of really great tools. Some people just relied on it very, very heavily. And I thought that some of the training modules, even in other settings besides what I experienced in the military, that it was an overused product.
Well, you know, what aside from the obvious with PowerPoint, and it's a presentation package, but what I like as a use case that a lot of people don't think about is 10, 20 slides is a business plan for a startup. So one slide for management, one slide for sales, one slide for product. And I really encourage people to go there and kind of keep it down below 24 slides. And nobody wants to read and God bless the Small Business Administration, but they have a template, you know, that is in a word processing format. And that's old school. The thick business plan and in a word is old school.
And every word you wanted to say is in there.
Yeah. Now people don't do that. It's now a deck.
Yes.
And they call it a pitch deck.
Very cool. So the any other products that you want to talk about that are kind of in that Windows platform of the makeup of Office 365?
Well, so Office 365 is well defined. Now, I think what's important to understand is that's one pillar of Microsoft. OEM pre-install play with Dell, Lenovo, HP, Acer, all of them. It was an OEM concept. And then, yes, you could actually buy Windows if you so desire, like say you built a white box.
Sure.
So you could buy Windows. So this paradigm has changed, and now it's really Windows as a service. And so we're getting away from that what we call FPP, fully priced product mentality, or the box, the software box, and it's now as a service. And so you're renting Windows on a monthly basis. And all of this kind of starts, you know, for the sake of today, the kind of functionality we would want with Microsoft 365, I'm going to say $25 a month. There are lower cost versions, but we'll agree on $25 a month for the serious business user. And Windows as a service. And what's good about that is that you never have to buy Windows again, right? So because it's cloud-based or cloud-maintained, it's updated overnight with patches and fixes. The next version is just automatically rolled out. So that's the good news, is we just have a new perspective on pillar number 2, Windows. The bad news is we don't have the midnight pizza launch parties anymore like we did for Windows. Was it XP or no, Windows 95?
Right.
Windows 95 was the midnight pizza party. So
I remember that.
Event planners are very sad. Event attendees are very sad. And you see where I'm going with this is that it did change the excitement level, right, of how we interact with software, because it used to be a real big deal. So that's pillar number 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's talk about a third pillar, which involves security.
Yep. So, you know, here again, help me remember, but it was probably along the days of the antitrust era at Microsoft, the 90s, late 90s. But you remember one fine day, Bill Gates, sent out one of his annual memos, and we have to focus on security.
Right.
And that was quite a while ago.
Right.
And he was in the saddle. Well, that hasn't changed, and Microsoft is a handsome target for hackers. And
indeed it is.
so they have made it, and this is the key point, they have made it a pillar. So pillar number 3 is security. So it has the same rank as Office 365 and Windows, right? They're really investing in that. They don't make any money per se off security, right? Because security would really be a cost to Microsoft. But basically, one example would be is you can set up double authentication for your environment, and so I'm safe to say I think we all know what that is today. That you go type in your password at your banking site, and then they text you a code to your mobile phone that's on file, the 6-8 digit code, and you put that on the next screen. Double authentication. That's an example of security in Office 365.
It makes a ton of sense to me that security would be one of the pillars.
Yeah.
Because when you think about living in this high-tech information age and how easily things can be compromised with loss of information or improper access to data.
Yeah.
And I think of security as, if you look at the banking model of years past and you said, and if the banker said, we don't have locks on our doors and we don't have a vault,
Yep.
you'd go, well, I'm glad you offer financial services and banking and everything else, but I'm not banking here.
Right.
Because there's no security.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really where all of that is. I mean, great tools with the Office 365 layout, the Windows environment, but it wouldn't be anything without security.
Yeah, exactly. And I certainly depend on security. I mean, I'm in the media, you're in the media, so we probably have outsized coverage, and that, when you have publicity and exposure, I'm not saying I'm a target, and I hope no one listening would treat me as such, but I do take security seriously, let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, not long ago when we were at the Interface Conference in Seattle, pretty much every vendor and person there at that event, was there anybody who wasn't associated with security or talking about security? Well,
and more importantly, that segment, I'll call it I don't know if I call it an economic sector, but that segment, the security segment, they're making money. That's a profitable segment. It's an evergreen. And here today, here tomorrow, young people listening that are kind of thinking, what would I like to do with myself in technology? Young men, pursue security.
Let's talk about the 4th pillar, which is device management.
Yep.
And what are really the important things for people to understand under device management?
Well, here's how I would frame it up, is it's really about BYOD, so bring your own device, right? And you're seeing it all the time. A couple of examples is you may have a company-issued laptop, you may not. You especially if you're on a gig, right?
Yeah.
If you're a gig economy worker, you have your own means of production. You got your laptop and your mobile phone. So my laptop happens to be a Lenovo. Yours is a Dell.
Yep.
My phone is a Moto Z, and your phone is an Android or an Apple,
yep.
an Android, and so the devices are different. So we needed to get our arms around managing disparate devices, making them secure. And so BYOD is another way to think of the device management pillar in Office and Microsoft 365. And so they're doing a couple things. They are using a tool called Intune. So Intune is a remote management and monitoring feature capability. And so we can track activity, intrusions. We can do a wipe if one of the devices is stolen.
Yep.
But probably my favorite on the device management side is that how quickly you can re-provision a laptop. And it seems like, just once in a blue moon, I have to get a new laptop. Well, certainly more than once in a blue moon, but you get a new laptop, and Kevin, that used to take, it felt like a weekend. I mean, you had to install Microsoft Office from disk, and you had to remember every single application you had and get them all running. And I'm not saying there's not a little bit of that, but basically this fourth pillar with the device management, we have automatic provisioning. And I really appreciate that, because basically you can be up, I'm going to be realistic and say half a day. So you can be up by lunch. Now, you know, the promo videos and Wiser Mind, they're going to tell you 60 minutes. And that may be true, but in the real world, once you get up, you still have to, you know, doggone it, I got to download that art program and reinstall it. You know, there's always going to be a little of that Microsoft doesn't support. But so those are the four pillars. I mean, we're talking Office 365, we're talking Windows as a service, we're talking security, thank you, and then we're talking device management. And again, just to reiterate on device management, just think of BYOD is the way to think of it.
All right. Here, before we wrap up, Harry, I want to, for the benefit of our audience, because we have a lot of both young and middle-aged and older people who follow the show here, talk a little bit to that younger generation. They're thinking about maybe getting into the world of tech, and take yourself back to where you kind of got started. Where was your, what kind of lit the fire under Harry Brelsford to say, I'm going to start something like SMB Nation. I'm going to work in the field of tech. I'm going to write all these different books on Microsoft.
Money.
What was money?
Money, and I'm probably unemployable. But let me tell you that story. That
a lot of entrepreneurs would say they're unemployable because they like being their own boss.
I'm here today. Look at me. I didn't have to ask the boss.
Well, what made you? So let me rephrase it then. Yeah. What made you think that all of this was possible? Like what happened today? How it would be possible? Back 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And I am going to go back to the very beginning. So what occurred was, grew up in Alaska, as I've told you in the past, and had the great fortune of summer jobs on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And, you know, came back to college in Denver with a pocket full of cash. And, you know, young people in cash are usually a problem.
Right.
So I went out and bought an Apple II Plus computer, a 40-character uppercase screen, a black and white screen, not even a green or screen. So long story short, I got in at the very beginning with the Apple II Plus and a Hayes 300 baud modem. Well, here's what occurred. That from my apartment, you could dial into the VAX mini frame, or maybe, I don't know if I call it VAX a mainframe, it was more of a mini computer. And everybody had to take Computer 101 and Programming 101. Sure. And so people were sitting in the hallway for their time, right? And I mean, literally like 11:30 at night, you got your hour, and people were sitting in the hallway. Well, I discovered that I could dial into the VAX from my apartment with the Hayes modem and the Apple II, and it became a dumb terminal. And then my neighbors discovered that was the case, so then they started bringing adult beverages over, and I discovered, so I didn't monetize it in the true, you know, dollars and cents way, but there was an exchange of economic value, and that was called time sharing. And I realized then and there, you know, we may be onto something. I mean, I could have a career at this. There's a real economic business model with technology.
Absolutely.
And so one thing led to another, you know, early NetWare. Now to tie off on one topic, how did I get into the writing part of it? Well, I was writing for Colorado Business Monthly magazine, and I was doing what they called interlock analysis. So on the Apple II, there was a database program called PFS, and we put in all these board of directors of companies in the state of Colorado, and you start seeing names that appear on 2 or 3 different boards, and those are powerful people.
Yeah.
And it took a computer, because otherwise I would have been working with 3x5 cards, let me tell you, trying to match up names. And that's how I got into the writing. So I would end on answering your question. That's I guess I felt early on that if you can discover the marriage between business and technology, there's a role for you, regardless of the technology era. And that's a real important final point. I'm talking to my son, recently about technology. He's interested in studying technology as one of his academic pillars. But the professor said it best the other day to him that, what I'm teaching you here, you're really going to learn technology on the job because it just changes so fast. I mean, we can't even teach it in college. We can teach you the fundamentals. So that's for the young people out there, fundamentals, and then you will be trained on the job.
When you talk about how rapidly things change in technology, and if somebody stays on their toes, they can obviously stay abreast with it for a good many years to come. But even from a hardware standpoint, not long ago I was in a Seagate plant.
Yep.
And they were using entirely what's called a pool inventory system. Now, for people who are not familiar with that in the manufacturing settings, a lot of times, the organizations in the past would bring all these products and parts in, etc. And then they would build things as people ordered them.
Right.
That's not how Seagate does it at all.
Okay.
It's what's called a pool inventory system. So order comes in, that triggers the pool of given products and services and reorders in there. So they have figured out basically what we have to have for minimums in each of the given areas.
Yeah.
And when an order is generated, that generated order also pulls from suppliers, etc., to bring additional material into the plant. So they're only replacing a minimal amount, and in some cases there's zero inventory in some areas. So your order is being processed by a facility that has a pool inventory system, which they're ordering as well because of your order. It's like a really interesting thing, but that's how sensitive and how rapidly things are changing in technology, is that even the makers of it and the manufacturers of it, the assemblers of it, have to be aware of how quick it changes. They aren't going to build this, put it on their shelf, and hope for an order. They don't do that anymore today.
Yeah, exactly.
So crazy stuff happening.
Yeah, highly, and and I'll tell you, probably one of the best examples of that kind of ERP supply chain management mentality is Amazon. I mean, they have nailed it for logistics.
Yeah. We actually showed not long ago a computerized picking going on in their warehouses. That was quite the deal.
Man.
Quite the deal. All right, well, thanks everybody who joined us here on Tech Tuesday. That's a wrap on the 4 pillars of Microsoft 365, Windows, security, and device management.
There
you go. Kevin Hunter, and of course the star of technology, one of the best names known in technology, Harry Brelsford, and of course Kyle Torgerson, making the tech happen on this show. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
This concludes today's live programming on Northwest Digital News. Thanks for joining us for this special broadcast. Heard around the world in more than 70 countries on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitch TV. If you enjoyed a story or guest we had here on Northwest Digital News and would like to strut your stuff on the broadcast, email us today at wainfo2017@gmail.com or call or text to 360-545-3501. We're always interested in unique stories, topics, and guests to share with our worldwide audience. Before you go, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and comment on the live stream. And for those of you who'd like to financially support the broadcast, you can do so at patreon.com/Northwest Digital News. We thank you for your patronage. On behalf of Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgerson, Stephanie Hunter, and all the people that made this broadcast possible, I'm Kevin Hunter. Till next time, take care.